operators who must own the future with all the rest of Barbados and put in place the necessary measures for us to recover and to stabilize and to transform. Some of the part of the background to this tourism levy bill, sir, is that effective July 1st, 2018, the Prime Minister and Minister of Finance also presented in the budget that a room levy will be implemented on all tourism accommodation. That is in Schedule 2, sir, to this bill for my honorable colleagues who would wish to follow along with each schedule. Also, sir, effective July 1st, our Prime Minister with responsibility for finance made the point that a product development levy, so there was the room rate levy and now the product development levy, would be applied to all direct tourism services. And those are services, Mr. President, that are defined in the Value Added Tax Amendment Act 2013 to 22 and the Value Added Tax Amendment Act 2018-12. Thirdly, sir, effective August 1st, 2018, there would be a shared economy levy. That, sir, is captured in Schedule 4 of the bill that is before us, and that would be implemented on all shared economy platform rentals. Sir, I pause here because it's important to mention that this shared economy levy seeks to enable us, sir, to capture a number of tourism services that are online, some of which may have been escaping the opportunity to contribute to this shared future of rebuilding Barbados. And we wanted to include them and ensure that they had the opportunity to contribute along with all the rest of Barbados. Sir, it was important, and I stress as I outline what the room rate levy, who pays it, and why it is inclusive, it is important for us to remember, sir, that it is not only Barbadians who live here who have to contribute to rebuilding. There are people who come and visit us who themselves will need to contribute. And so, sir, the room rate levy, who will pay that, sir? It is to be charged on the provision of tourist accommodation, and this, sir, is paid by the visitor. That is the room rate levy. With regards to the product development levy, it is to be charged on services specified in paragraph 1 of the 4th schedule to the value added tax. That, sir, is paid by the consumer when they consume direct tourism services. For example, if you go to a restaurant, that's considered a direct tourism service. So we know, sir, that the room rate levy paid by the visitor, we have the product development levy paid by the consumer, and, sir, also the shared economy levy that is charged on the provision of tourist accommodation owned or operated by persons who earn income from the tourism sector in Barbados, but who are either not registered or given exempt status under the value added. Sir, that captures your Airbnbs, it captures your home away, it captures that category that are perhaps slipping through from making their contribution right now. And this shared economy levy, sir, this is paid by the vendor. So you have the visitor, you have the consumer, you have the vendor, all being part of contributing to the future. Mr. President, I will not delay this honorable House further because the percentages that will be charged for each of these three, the shared economy, the product development, and the room rate levies, they are all outlined in detail in the schedule to this bill. What I will say, though, sir, if they would wish for us to go over this directly, I would suggest we perhaps go over that in committee, sir. What I will say is that since this particular bill passed through the other place, sir, the continuous conversations with the Barbados Hotel Association, Hotel and Tourism Association, as well as the Barbados Revenue Authority and our ministries of finance and the stakeholders continued. We are on a path of continuous improvement, sir, and we continue dialogue even after bills are passed to ensure that we are constantly contributing and making these bills better as we go. And so, sir, I would just like to signal to this honorable House that based on those meetings that would have happened subsequent to this bill being passed in the other place, there are a number of amendments, some adjustments, not consequential to the substance in any way, form, or fashion, but that are certainly helpful in ensuring that we continuously improve, sir. And I would wish to reserve the right to have that conversation during committee. And so with these very few words, Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill be read a second time.
I recognize Senator Frank.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I am completely confused. I'll start by saying that I prepared for a bill dated the 9th of July 2019. And only a few moments ago, just before this bill was introduced here, I saw the clerk with a copy, and I just borrowed it from him. It's dated the 11th of December 2019. And while Senator McConnell was speaking, I was going through some of the amendments, and because they were easy to pick up, because they were in bold, you know, and that's what led to my confusion, because I cannot prepare for something that is happening while I'm speaking, or while the presenter is speaking. It is not fair to me. If you had consequential amendments, this should have been circulated, letting me know that some of the points that you might have had might have been changed, or something else might have been introduced, whatever. I cannot tell you. So what I will do, I will speak to what I know, and if there are any changes, then you can signal to me, or we change that. Because there's no way that I can have absorbed all the changes in that brief presentation that Senator McConnell made. Sir, I will start, but with that notice, I was now trying to speak to this bill, and it should be a bill, I said before, a bill to, you know, they said the objects and reasons, but it says a bill that will provide for, and one that provides for should be a levy that kills the goose that lays the golden egg. You know, you have to stop taxing at some point. You know, yes, we need the money, and people will speak about what happened in the last decade, and they will say the last 15 years. It is only a decade, because the rot didn't start in 2008. It started before. But, sir, we find ourselves in this mess, and we want to get ourselves out. I want the country out of this mess. But at the same time, sir, we cannot, as I said, kill the goose that lays the golden egg. Barbados is not a cheap place to live or to visit. And if you are going to put other burdens on the people who come here, they might seek to go elsewhere. My son is a regular visitor to Bali, and he sends me pictures and videos of his trip, and then the price, of course, he tipped one of the people 100,000 baht, but that was only $12 US. There were, that is the point I'm making. It is relatively cheap. My son goes over there, spend a month, right? But it is, to spend a month in Barbados, it is not, you got to have a lot of money. And a lot of the people who come to Barbados are not wealthy people. You have a few at some of the major hotels, call themselves 5 them and all kind of stuff. Yeah, that money is no problem with them. But that is not the major part of our tourism product. So when we keep taxing them, we're going to tax them into another destination. They're going to find someplace else to go. Yeah, and well, they will go to St. Lucia. I never see them down there when I arrive. And mind you, when I go to St. Lucia, I see 4 and 5 cruise ships tied up next to the road. You know, there's the harbor right onto the road there, and you can step off and go there. But I don't see. Well, I'm glad. But see, I don't know. You see, because I can't get in to see them. You know, but I see a lot of tourists walking around in St. Lucia stuff, and I'm saying, well, up to today, I was speaking with someone asked me if I were the Prime Minister. They were out here visiting and asked me if I were the Prime Minister. And I said to them, I am not in I'm not in danger of that happening. You know,
Good one.
Pardon?
Good one.
Yes, sir. I thought that was it. You know.
Good one.
Yeah. So I said I'm not in danger of that happening. So I had a little talk with them and stuff, and they like Barbados and stuff, but we're going to run them away. With but what some hotel properties have done in Barbados is to deceive the government and rob its workers. Because when the government introduced this levy, some of these packages are booked a year in advance. And they didn't want to go back to the tour operators and say, look, the government put a new tax on, so you got to pay. So what these people did, to some of the people who I represent, is to take the service charge that was intended to give the worker a little something more, because wages in the hotel industry are very poor at this point in time. I remember when my sisters worked in the hotel industry back in the 70s, they dollar for dollar, they took home more money than the people that take home today. And I'm talking about the inflation or anything, I just write dollar. If the people are taking home $150 this week, they used to be taking home $200 back in the 70s. So tourism has not been to the benefit of the workers of this country. And when they get the little service charge that is intended to give them a little bit more, the owners of these hotel properties have stolen, in some instances, that money, converted it to their use. Not stolen, they converted it to their own use, rather than pay the workers that it was intended. They also steal the workers' tips. Yes, steal. I call it stealing. Workers, if you give good service to a visitor, the visitors appreciate it. and they give you a little tip. Now, many hotels, and they are growing, pool those tips. And the management, some of them who don't even come in contact with the visitors, get more of those tips than the workers. Yeah, that's true. I spoke to about the right to me, will check. You ain't check? Or you ain't come back and tell me nothing? A lot of them do it. But you see what has happened here? The hotels who have service charge, the people who deal with the frontline people who actually see the visitors, they get lesser service charge because they get tips. And the people who work in the kitchen preparing the food and stuff, they get more points on the service charge, so their salaries come up, their wages come up based on the service charge. The waiters and the barmen who actually get tips and stuff, they get less service charge. But they pool the people tips from them now. I know they're robbing them with service charge as well. The hotel industry in Barbados.
President. Senator Franklin is misleading the chamber. I did not want to interrupt him. He speaks about robbing and stealing, and there is a system in place with the service charge committee, and there's a methodology behind it. And Senator Franklin, I don't think, sir, should come to this chamber and speak about the stealing of money, because that is not the case. He's misleading this chamber.
Mr. President, I stand by everything that I've said so far. I know what I'm talking about. The workers call me complaining because they take away the service charge now and pay. You speak to your people, you know who they are. I've mentioned them to you already. I've mentioned to you already, but I'm not going to call their names on the floor of this chamber. They take the workers' money, the money that's intended for the workers, and they use it for breakage in the hotels, they use it for replacing the towels, all kinds of stuff, rather than give it to the workers who are very poorly paid these days in the hotels. And let me tell you something. They make sure they get everything out of you, because a lot of hotel properties work in what they call now split. It's going on for a while. You come in the mornings and work, serve breakfast and all kind of stuff, and when you get a little downtime, then you go home. And then you come back evenings to serve dinner. Now you catch two. I'm thankful to this government. This catastrophic budget that you call mini budget, where you introduce an increase in bus fares. Some of them are paying as much as $28 a day to and from work. And when you get the little service charge, it don't even cover the bus fare now, because the owners of the properties have actually taken over the people's money and use it for their own purposes and not to pay the workers as it was intended, or what the service charge committee thought they were getting. It don't work so anymore. That's what they tell you on paper. But what actually happens is that the workers are robbed. No. So that was an aside. Yeah. But I want to get into the substance of this bill. And I want to start by saying, sir, that the government has to stop this nonsense now. This measure was introduced in July 2018. It was introduced under the Provisional Collection of Taxes Act, which gives the government 4 months to bring legislation to this place and the other place to regularize the minister, because the minister under that act can introduce a new tax or raise a tax from the date that immediately or from any date they specify, without bringing legislation for a maximum of 4 months. Section 5 of the Provisional Collection of Taxes Act, I think it's Section 5, Section 4, says that if you do not bring the legislation within that time, the tax ceases to be payable. So all it no, people should have stopped paying that tax because there's no law that forces you to pay the tax. I know the lawyers will say, oh, we will do this validation and stuff. But this validation is being done contrary to our Constitution. And again, the lawyers rely on British law, English law rather, to ground this illegal validation that they continue to do in this place. Our Constitution, Section 16, I think it's Section 16. I could be wrong, but it's around Section 16. Gives you the right to property. And you cannot be deprived of your property without a written law, and except for this Provisional Collection of Taxes Act, that's one of the exceptions you can use to take people's property, but you only have 4 months. At the end of that 4 months, by the end of that 4 months, you are supposed to have a law in place. Or no, you are depriving people of their property without due process of law. They weren't fined, and they are not being taxed because there's no law to tax them. Now that is a constitutional provision. Now if you want to fix that, you have to amend the Constitution, or if not amend, what do you call it? Alter the Constitution to the extent to make this act legal. Because you are relying on the British president where they will come and validate certain things. But they don't have a written constitution, so they can go and do anything. We have a written constitution that forbids us from doing it. But yet still we go back now and we rely on the English president to validate our bad behavior. This money is supposed to be refunded to the people who you took it from because you didn't bring a law in place. And you had 4 months. And not only did you have 4 months, no, you had 4 months in which to bring a piece of legislation to this house, or to these houses. And on the 11th of December, after being introduced in July last year, you still amending all it now, you know. Something is awfully wrong with that. Government cannot seem to be so oppressive that because you have 29 seats in the other place, that you can do whatever you like and feel that it is okay. You know, I remember reading once, it said that no one is safe when the legislature is meeting. And this is what's happening here, you know. Barbados is safe when this government, when this parliament is in session. Because every so often you rise and you do the wrong thing. Right now you're taking away people's money without any law in place. And then you're going to say, okay, we can validate it. You can't legally validate it because the only way to take away property and to compensate somebody is to give them money. But you're taking away money. So you're going to compensate with money? Well, of course, you don't really do that now because you're taking away around property and giving the money. But so you're doing everything. You're taking away my money, and there's no other compensation for money than money. So you can't really do this. But you're doing it every time, and you feel you can get away with it because people either don't know or you think the men looking. And you think people only look every 5 years. Sir, this has to stop. The government cannot, not with 29 seats, behave in this manner. It is oppressive. They are treating the people of this country like we don't matter. You do what you like. You behave as you like. And one former prime minister said, you like it or you lump it. Well, I certainly don't like it, and I don't like lumps. It is wrong. Government has to stop this thing. And I don't know if, and sir, now let me move on again. I don't know if we are getting it right even now. Because I didn't see any changes here to this thing, to the new one, because I was browsing. And I see here they refer to the Barbados Tourism Product Authority. That still exists? They close it down. But you have to register with the Barbados Tourism Product Authority. It doesn't have an office. It does not have a person working for it. It doesn't have anything. So what are we doing with this legislation? Do we mean Barbados Tourism Marketing Corporation, or do we mean the Ministry of Tourism? Right? Because I know they send home all the people who used to work at Barbados Tourism Product Authority. You put some to work at the Barbados Tourism Marketing Inc. and you shut the place down. But if you go through this act, it speaks to, you have a license from the Barbados Tourism Product Authority, you do all these things, Barbados Tourism Product Authority. And you even define what the Barbados Tourism Product Authority is. It says here, authority means the authority established under Section 3 of the Barbados Tourism Product Authority Act 2014. Remember a couple of weeks ago we came here and validated some acts of this authority because the authority had gone out of business, but the former CEO had given duty-free certificates contrary to law, so we had to go back and deal with it. I know we're saying it here in this bill that we have a new legislation that we're going to be here again, so somebody is fooling me, man, and I don't like it. You know, this is untidy. You know, you do these things and you rush and do these things, and then you rush to fix them. Get it right the first time. There are enough competent people in the Barbados Labour Party, government, administration, and in the public service that can help guide you. Rather than come with these, not the current minister accepted, of course, rather than come to Parliament every time and making these boo-boos. Well, I don't feel that we should be dealing with this today, and I really feel that we should come back next year to deal with it because I understand today is the last. But I could be wrong. I don't see any nods from the chair, sir. You know, sir, but I am troubled by the act. You know, I made some notes, and one of the things I want to talk about too, sir, I started earlier, but government don't only have to tax the hotel industry, tax the tourism industry, or whatever you call it. They got to look out for the people who work in this industry. Nobody seems to be doing it. You know, I understand that tourism is one of the, if not the main engine for growth. It's what the main driver of our economy. But the people who work in it, just like sugar was the main driver of our economy back in the 17th and 18th century, tourism has replaced it in much the same way, except that the workers don't get beaten and they are not chained. You bring white expatriates, and I'm saying white expatriates, to mistreat them. I thought some of our even more renowned properties. We have one property who has a HR person from Egypt. You know? The fellow who's responsible for security on the beach, again, he's some expatriate, white expatriate again. I'm talking about one particular property on the West Coast. You know? I spoke about it sometime before under another head and another thing, and I was challenged. People got in the newspaper and wrote a lot of crap and tried to make it appear that I don't know what I was talking about. You have in this country hotel properties that have been blackmailing the governments. I'm saying not Barbados Labour Party or the LP, both administrations have been blackmailing them into bringing people into Barbados to work, to do jobs that our people can do. And one of the threats they use is that if we don't get these work permits, we can shut the place. So we bring people into Barbados with no skills in the particular area. All they do is come in there and draw a lot of money and make life difficult for the average Barbadian worker. One property in particular, there was an intervention from a government minister when the immigration department told them that they can't bring in an expatriate because they got bedrooms who could be Jamaji the best. Well, there was some accommodation, and this is how they resolved it. A government minister in the last administration, okay? I want you to be aware of that. So that minister used his powers of persuasion to get the work permit changed, or the decision changed. But they said the person must now train a Barbadian understudy to take over for them within 3 years. Coming up into the 3-year period, they found a reason to fire the understudy. So then that person has to get another 3 years. This is what is happening in Barbados, and people are taking a nod at it. And that's what passing. I see when I spoke the last time about it, the chief immigration officer said in a comment in the paper that advertisements don't necessarily mean approvals. But more so than not, that is what happens. More so than not, once these hotel properties advertise for somebody, they get them. And we have people who are trained in tourism, marketing, all these areas in the hotels, but they can only get this far. One particular hotel again, they brought in a guy who tells everybody, who they say that he knows more about managing golf courses, know what to put on grass to get it green and stuff. We actually have a Barbadian RCM property better qualified than him. That the Barbadian has to show him what to do. But what happens? The Barbadian fellow is always going to be number 2. When that guy leaves, they're going to bring another number 1. Left Barbados, trained, get all sorts of qualifications. From your alma mater, Senator Grant, you would probably know him. He's around your age. Excellent worker, but can only get thus far and no further because the complexion of his skin doesn't allow him to reach senior management at these places. They treat staff like slaves. And I'm not talking about 1 or 2 hotel properties. And if the HR people refuse to comply with refuse to break the Barbados laws, they get a new HR. One hotel company in Barbados, for the last 10 years, had about 6 different HR people. The last 2, one is from New York, and the current one is from Egypt. They don't know nothing about Barbados. But they will do what senior management at this particular property wants. But they pay a lot of taxes. And we want their taxes. So we let it slide. Now we need standards. We need to tell these people, yes, you can come to Barbados, but there are certain behaviors that we will not accept. But just recently, this same hotel property, young lady goes into the room to clean. Beautiful young lady. And this gentleman thought that she would have been his property and he could take advantage of her. She went to the police. He confessed. And the hotel forced her hand to take $5,000 to credit. I was trying to tell the girl, no, not $5,000, 50,000, and because he was British, pounds. And he was Lord something, he had a sort of, ain't one name in the papers down there, so he would have paid. But they forced this girl, because they're complicit in this nasty behavior, you know. People can come back and do anything to our workers, and the hotels hide it. I don't want 50,000 pounds, but the girl get $5,000. They peddle on people. So these different, and he called himself Lord, whatever. And he actually, when the police came, he admitted it. And he was sorry. He ain't sorry, he's sorry the girl reported it. Wasn't reported, as a matter of fact, it gets swept under the rug because nobody wanted to know these things happen at these particular properties, you know. And of course, if you don't have a willing complainant, then much more the police can do, you know. Mr. President, again, let me make myself clear with this thing. I have no difficulty with the government using its best efforts to get us out of the mess that they have re-inherited, because it was their mess before. But we have to realize that you cannot tax your way out of this recession. You can't tax our way out, because let me tell you something. It will reach a point when you can tax no more. We have to look for other investments and not sell them the passports. Because that is one area that I frown upon. I take my citizenship very seriously. You know, I'm entitled to citizenship elsewhere, and I have not taken advantage of that, because I am a proud Barbadian. I will visit. I visit frequently, and but I am a Barbadian. I am a Barbadian, and I'm proud of it. And I do not want to see our citizenship being sold for or even our diplomatic passports being given to international criminals. Not that we are contemplating it, but because it is happening and elsewhere, I just want to sound the alarm that, and I know all other honorable senators on both sides will agree with me, that this being a Barbadian is something that we are all very proud of. And we do not want to hear that a Barbadian is involved, especially somebody with, not even necessarily be a Barbadian, but somebody with a Barbados passport being involved with a lot of nefarious things that is happening around the world. When I hear that a Barbadian is involved with things, I feel it. I go to another country, I behave good. You know, yes, I do. I follow all their rules. I don't even jaywalk. You know, because I want to set a standard. When I leave this place, I'm an ambassador for Barbados. Always will be. So I just wanted to sound that note of caution, because I know under the Immigration Act right now, we make provision for investors to become immigrants of Barbados. They can, if you invest a certain amount of money, you can apply for immigrant status, and you can get it, right? And I don't mind that. If you want a Barbados passport, you must show that you deserve it. You mustn't show that you have the amount of money that you can pay for. And I can assure you, because my wife has a Barbadian passport, and she deserves it. Anybody married to me deserve a passport, man. You know. You know, but seriously, uphold the name of Barbados and keep it going. I wanted to talk about some other things too, but I've spoken to Dr. Walker before he left, and he assured me what I was hearing on social media was not true. So I will leave that alone, but burying our flag, because I'm very proud, and I abhorred and hurt when I heard it. But then I take him to his word, and I believe him. So I'm satisfied that that didn't happen. But, sir, back to the bill. The bill, yes, we need taxes, yes, we need the money and stuff, but it is not the visitor's burden to bear. It is Barbados. Look, we elected an incompetent government, and we have to suffer the consequences of that. Not many say we, I didn't vote for them, but I say a collective we. We have that burden to bear. You can't tell me now that we are going to spread the burden around, because those people got burdens elsewhere. And they're coming here to get a little bit of R&R. And then you are telling them to bail us out of our mess. We want to tax you, but you can tax you at random. Right now, one of the reasons why I don't travel as much as I used to, as much as I would like, because, sir, the airfare here, I'm here to St. Lucia, it is cheaper to catch JetBlue and go to Fort Lauderdale and come down to, but last year, I'm talking about last year, I haven't checked this year, and come back now from Fort Lauderdale back down to St. Lucia. It was cheaper than flying from Barbados to St. Lucia. That is ridiculous. $900 somebody to get to St. Lucia from Barbados, and you were getting $900 to go up and down. But I couldn't spend 6 hours in the air to save a few dollars, so I would have done that way. But what we need to do, also to help our tourism, to get more tourists around this place, is to lower the cost of traveling in interregional travel. I would like to visit some other islands. I remember some time ago, there was some proposal for a ferry to travel between Barbados and the other islands, and I understood it would have been $120. How many $120 they're waiting? It never came true, because I don't have my long life jacket and sitting down in the boat till I get to wherever I'm going, because I ain't gonna take it off till I get to dry dock. I can't swim, all right? But we are not innovating. We hear about these innovations, and people, I would welcome, and I saw a lot of other people would welcome, because right now I have a little carry-on bag, and Liat makes me put it in the thing, and if it got more than 15 pounds, let me take out some. Yeah? My navel string is not buried in St. Lucia. No, not true. My navel string is not buried there, but those who I care about, their navel strings are there, so I'm going to look for the spot. You know, but so we need to encourage more people to come to Barbados, not discourage them. And we have this. If you look at the breakdown from the when you get an airline thing from Iliad, landing charges here, this airport charge here, the taxes are more than the fare. The governments and the region and the airports get more money than Iliad, and it's Iliad plane. You know, it is a sad situation where you are buying a service, and the service costs you $100, and you're paying $150 in taxes. That is not right. Governments have to rethink the model and stop trying to kill the goose that lays the golden egg. Just let me check my notes here to make sure I touch the points that I wanted to touch before I close. And yes, sir, yes, clause 14 of the bill. Clause 14 of the bill, I don't know if it's the same clause 14 as it was in the old thing, but that is the same thing as the identical provision in the Duties, Taxes, and Other Payments Exemption Act, Cap 67B. We really want to put it here too? It is identical. No, it was 14? Yes, it is still 14. That's what you see, that's when we're rushing to do things. You shouldn't be rushing this, you know. You had too long to do this, you know. it remind, you wait and do things when you need it right away. You had a whole long time to prepare this, and you're doing it and you're getting it wrong at this point in time. I am appalled at that type of behavior. If we are coming to this country and asking them to vote for us so we can run this place, if you are not capable of doing it, or you don't got the time to do it, don't bother to come. Tell the people, look, let somebody else do it because I ain't doing it good enough. Sir, and I thank you very much for those few minutes that you allowed me to speak. Much obliged to you, sir.
Right? As the next speaker.
Thank you, Mr.
For the next 30 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stand up in this chamber today a little disappointed and a little sad that Senator Franklin could come to this chamber and deliver that type of presentation. Let me make this very clear, Mr. President. Senator Franklin never gave me any names for any hotels, and I challenge Senator Franklin to say which properties these are. Because, Mr. President, every single day I go to work representing a number of members of the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association. And many of the hotels, the way Senator Franklin speaks, it would suggest as if these are slavery days. He speaks, sir, about these expats. I want to see exactly the words that he wrote. These bring in white expats. Sir, do you know that the majority of the managers at hotels are Barbadians? The majority of the managers at hotels are Barbadians. What is it that Senator Franklin is trying to suggest? And if the senator is seeking to ensure that he's able to increase his membership, he must do so.
A point of order, Mr. Chairman. He's attributing a proper motive to what I have said, and he's accusing me of a conduct I do not think a senator should behave like, and I won't accept it from him. I am saying, I have said to him, I didn't want to call his name, go to Sandy Lane and tell me how many black managers you have down there in any significant position. One.
That is not a point of order.
Yes, sir. Sorry, sir.
Senator Grant did preface his remarks by saying if you intended so and so, and you didn't get any further. Please allow him to continue.
Mr. President, I reiterate. The majority of the managers in the hotels in Barbados are Barbadians. The majority of them are black too, but they are Barbadians. Senator Franklin gives the impression that a situation exists in Barbados where white expats come into this country and treat black people as if they are nothing. Sir, Massa Days done. And Senator Franklin must not come into this chamber and seek to give the impression that there are hotels in this country that are mistreating the workers. Sir, of course, in everything there are issues that will come to the fore. And I have to say, sir, that the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association, which represents the majority of hotels in Barbados, that we have a very good relationship with the representative of the workers, which is the Barbados Workers Union. And we have certain protocols in place to deal with issues that come to our attention. And I do not know what it is that Senator Franklin is speaking about. He starts by referencing the service charge. He references the service charge, and he gives the impression.
Order.
He gives the impression that the majority of managers, and I'm going to take some time, sir, to go through here a list of, just to reference some individuals that benefit from the service charge, because there's a service charge committee in place. Yes, there's a points system, but I'm not aware that there are managers who are benefiting from this system. I know that we have an agreement, the BHDA, with the Barbados Workers Union. I know that a number of hotels that are not part to that agreement also follow the agreement. And let me tell you, sir, the classification, the workers that get the benefits. Lost that section there, but it referenced, sir, I'm going to find it. But the reality is that the comments being provided by Senator Franklin are not accurate. The people who benefit, sir, you're talking, sir, about the maids, you're talking about cooks, you're talking about bellmen. Sir, there are no managers referenced as part of that. The workers who benefit, sir, from the service charge, because it is designed to, yes, there are those who are not frontline workers that get the benefit, but those workers are not managers. And Senator Franklin must stop coming into this chamber and seeking to mislead the chamber and seeking not to represent the facts. You know, when I listen to Senator Franklin, there's a phrase, and let me mention some more as I have it here. General cook, dishwashing, bartender, assistant bartender, bus person, laundry worker, front desk clerk, receptionist, butcher, night auditor, senior gardener, lifeguard, beach attendant, bell captain, security guard, telephone operator, night porter, general worker. There is no reference, sir, to managers. And Senator Franklin really must come to the chamber with facts. You know, when I listened to his presentation, I remembered a quote. Oh, what a tangle web we weave when first we practice to deceive. And while, sir, I recognize while I recognize, sir, that quote had to deal with initially a love triangle, the substance of it, though, related to the misrepresentation of the truth. And Senator Franklin continually comes into this chamber and makes references which, in my view, Mr. President, have no relationship with reality or with truth. He started, sir. He started,
Call
sir.
him to order, sir. He called me a liar. In his view, I am a liar. He just said that.
I didn't hear
You know,
that.
Mr. President, he has to control himself. I know he has a mission. His job is to, when he goes to Parliament group, you got to control Caswell. But at the same time, he cannot come in here and say the things that he said about me, knowing full well what I'm saying is correct, you know. And I actually spoke this, I can start speaking, because I actually gave him the name. I actually gave him the name of one of the hotels. And he came here just now and said that I never told him anything. I told him, and I even sent him to the person responsible.
Senator, that's
You know?
no point about it.
Sir, again, sir, I'm guided by you, but he can't keep on doing that. He's not telling the truth, sir.
There's no problem, no problem, Mr. President. You know, when I speak in this chamber, I relate the facts. And when I speak in this chamber, I speak, sir, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And sir, I believe that, sir, I believe that I have a right to state in this chamber what my understanding is in relation to any speech that is made. And if I believe that the speech, sir, does not square off, in my view, with truth, then I have the right, sir, to say so. And if Senator Franklin, if I know that Senator Franklin may become a little agitated. And he may become a little agitated because he might not have expected that someone would come up in this chamber and forcefully confront what he has said that misrepresents the truth. But sorry, go on. I go on. Senator Franklin started by making comments in relation to the level of taxation. And let me say, sir, that this tourism levy bill is extremely important. I think it is appropriate, and I've said it before, that all tourism enterprises pay their fair share of taxation, that all tourism enterprises are properly regulated. I heard Senator Franklin making reference to the fact that the level of taxation is essentially impacting on the number of visitors coming to Barbados. So I want to share with this chamber some information between the period January to September 2019. And sir, the information which I will share relates to information which we received from the Barbados Tourism Marketing Inc. It relates to information which we received from STR, which was Smith Travel Research, and it relates to information which the BHDA has done internally. Sir, between January and September, based on the information received from the Barbados Tourism Marketing Inc., visitor arrivals increased by 4.2%. Mr. President, based on the information received from the STR report, we have seen an increase in occupancy for members of 5.2%. And in relation to the internal surveys that have been done by the BHDA, we have seen an increase of 5.1%. Sir, all of the indicators are that even though there has been an increase in the level of taxation, we are still seeing more visitors coming to Barbados. It therefore is incorrect, wrong, and a misrepresentation of the facts for Senator Franklin to suggest that the level of taxation has resulted in less visitors coming to Barbados. Sir, it simply is not true.
A point of order, Mr. Chairman. He is setting up a straw man and knock it down. I never said that it resulted in anybody coming to Barbados. That is a bold-faced untruth. I said it can result. I said when the prices are high, they're going to seek to go elsewhere. I never said that any numbers going to go. I know the numbers are up. What can happen is if the taxes weren't so high, instead of 5%, we got 10. That's the problem. So, but you stop misquoting me, you know. You are not truthful.
Mr. President,
Please continue, Senator.
this morning, Mr. President, this morning, Senator Franklin cannot speak for me. This morning, I made a few remarks at the 4th quarterly meeting of the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association. I indicated at that meeting that these are indeed challenging times that we are in. Previously, I talked about the words of Buju Banton in his song, "It's Not an Easy Road." And This morning I reflected on the words of Art Garfunkel. I believe the song is Wayaya. I hope I have it right. And I believe, sir, that most of us know the words, it will be hard, we know. The road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows we will get there. We know we will. And I went on to say, sir, that when there are challenges that we must never give up. We can go over, go under, go around, go through. But the one thing we must never do is to give up. And I accept, sir, that we exist in an environment that is very challenging. We did not create the environment that we are in. But what is important and critical is that the decisions are taken for us to effectively deal with the challenges that exist. And this tourism levy bill, sir, this tourism levy bill
Give him a chance.
provides the opportunity for us, yes, to look at the level of taxation. And let me say this. The leader of government business in introducing this bill made reference to the room rate levies. And I remember, sir, when the levies were first introduced, there was concern of the impact that that would have. And when the levies were further increased, there was concern about the impact that that would have. But our visitors to Barbados have been embracing the payment of the levies. We have had no significant pushback and no major concern with respect to the payment of the levies. The reality is this, sir, I go on many occasions to different countries, traveling to assist in the promotion of Barbados as a tourism destination. And I go into a hotel, and when I see the level of taxation, it is nothing compared to what is being charged in Barbados. I think, sir, that visitors recognize that there is a level of taxation that is applied. What is important, it is not simply the level of taxation, but it is to ensure that the value for money proposition is correct. And you know, sir, in early November, I went to London to participate in World Travel Market. The delegation, sir, was led by the Minister of Tourism, the Honorable Kerry Simmons, included representatives from the BHTA, the BTMI, the Ministry of Tourism. We held talks with our partners in the UK. Those partners being tour operators, those partners being airlines. Sir, the information coming back to us, this is not Rudy Grant talking. This information has come from those that we relate with, our partners in our major source market, the United Kingdom. And it is that Barbados is still the #1 trending destination in the region out of the United Kingdom. And sir, they have informed that in relation to 2020, all the indicators are that we will see growth next year as well. And Mr. President, that does not in any way reflect that we don't have some challenges to deal with. Yes, we have challenges. Sir, there's a trade war existing between China and the United States that can have significant implications for the global economy and for small developing states such as Barbados. Sir, in our major source market, there's an uncertainty. Today is December the 11th. It's tomorrow. Is tomorrow there will be voting in the United Kingdom. But in our major source market, there is uncertainty with respect to Brexit. But, Mr. President, we are still seeing growth. we are still seeing people coming to Barbados. And the reality is that people are coming because Barbados is still a good destination to travel to. Barbados still gives value for money. I do accept, sir, that there are things that we have to improve. We have to ensure that we are constantly and consistently improving our product offering. That is important. We have to ensure that we are able to refresh our activities and attractions. We have to ensure that as we do that, we also expand our airlift coming into Barbados, and that we are able to facilitate a larger number of persons coming here. We have to ensure, sir, that we are able to increase the visitor spend, because that is important with respect to the overall revenues that will be achieved by this industry. I am not saying, sir, that there aren't issues and that there aren't challenges, but I am saying, sir, that this industry is performing well, and the manner in which Senator Franklin speaks to give the indication that this industry is on the precipice of disaster is simply not correct. Sir, in relation to this tourism levy bill, and the acting leader of government business did indicate that there have been some discussions with the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association with respect to the bill that was before the Senate. There are some elements, sir, that we felt needed to be amended. The Prime Minister, in her budget debate, would have indicated that the villas would be, I believe, exempt from VAT because there was a difference in the input and the output tax. And what was happening was that they were able to claim back and in essence be subsidized. We made a recommendation that you could capture villas under the definition for vacation rental management properties, and that would better assist in closing that loophole, because we felt that there were still the possibility that some entities would be able to claim back. And I want to, sir, compliment the government. You know, the bill before the Senate would have made reference to the vacation rental properties again, and reference to the payment of a room rate levy of 3.75%. And in our discussions with the Barbados Revenue Authority and officials of the Ministry of Finance, we agreed that it was more appropriate to have the shared economy levy of 10% apply to that category. The point that I'm making, sir, is that, and the reason I'm complimenting the government is because the government is prepared to listen. The government is prepared to dialogue. The government is prepared to take on board suggestions that come from those who every day go to work and participate in this very important industry. Mr. President, everything is not working perfect, and things are not going to work perfect. In relation to the operations of the Tourism Development Act and the Tourism Development Amendment Act, this morning again, I made the appeal for our Minister of Tourism to assist us with a meeting with the Ministry of Finance. I can say that the Minister in the Ministry of Finance has indicated that he will meet with the BHTA and the other parties, the Ministry of Tourism, the officials of the Ministry of Finance, the Customs and Excise Department, and the Barbados Tourism Investment Inc. And the reason for that is for us to have further discussion on how those pieces of legislation are operated. Yes, there are areas where we have to improve. But, sir, things are not as Senator Franklin suggests. We are seeing growth and improvement in this very important industry. We are seeking to ensure, sir, that we are able to provide benefits for the workers. Next year, I anticipate that we at the BHTA will sit again with the Barbados Workers Union. And we will go through our memorandum of agreement and we will discuss all of those critical issues relating to the workers. And wherever there's a situation that a member does not conform to what is agreed to, I get communication from the Barbados Workers Union and we deal with the issue. And let me make it absolutely clear, for the avoidance of doubt, the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association will never, sir, encourage any harsh, wicked, any treatment, ill treatment, sir, of the workers in this industry or any workers in Barbados. The Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association holds very high ideals and very high standards. And I give you the assurance, sir, that as an association, we take our responsibility seriously with respect to ensuring we represent the interests of our members. But we recognize, sir, that every single day, the workers of this country go to work and give of their best tirelessly to ensure that we continue to see growth in this very important industry. And I want, sir, to compliment them and to thank the workers and to say to them that the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association will continue to be supportive of you. Sir, I'm supportive of the tourism levy bill. There's a lot more that I can say. I don't know, sir, how much more time I would have to say it in. There's a lot that is happening in this industry. We have, sir, recently had a culinary competition. Barbados last year won the national team at the Taste of the Caribbean. We boast of Barbados as being the culinary capital of the Caribbean. And we will very shortly announce a culinary team. Sir, we are working very diligently with our partners to ensure that the visitor experience is one that is enhanced. The reality is that the visitors are asking for an authentic experience. And I reference the issue with respect to the culinary competition and the bartender competition because I think that as it relates to the aspect of authenticity, that it is important to communicate that we are seeking to ensure even in our culinary experience that persons coming to Barbados are able to experience our culinary delights. And let me say this, sir. There was a time in Barbados when the majority of chefs came from overseas. Sir, when you go into the hotels in Barbados, you will see that the majority of chefs are Barbadian chefs. You will see, sir, that is the case because we have sought to ensure that even in the event that non-Barbadians came in, that there was a period where they had to train Barbadian chefs. So, and what you're saying with respect to the chefs is not peculiar just to that, but it is happening throughout the industry. Because, sir, we have to ensure that this industry is not simply for a few, but that this industry is for all Barbadians. Sir, I am very happy to give my support to the bill before this honorable chamber. I thank you.
I can do Springer first. Boys just come. Senator Springer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would want to just start my presentation by supporting the bill, but also by starting where Senator Grant would have ended, where he spoke to the training of chefs, where he spoke to the entering and the winning of competitions in bartending and culinary arts and so on and so forth. Because when I look at the reason for the use of a lot of the revenue that comes from these various taxes that are levied on visitors or hotels, a number of things come up. And one of those identified, apart from conservation, which I will look at, preservation of heritage and culture, infrastructural development, research, there's training. And there are areas that fall under maybe the Ministry of Education that perhaps persons would not readily identify with the hotel industry. For example, just a few weeks ago, we would have had our World Skills Juniors competition. And it's not very well known because it was the first time that such a competition was held. I'm just going to let the Honorable House know that, Chairman, that we are starting even earlier in terms of our training of young persons to work within the industry, not even here alone, but across the region, across the world. We are starting as early as secondary school, 16-year-olds, who are now being trained in international cuisine and cooking and cookery and so on and so forth, and bartending. We've started early so we can have that cohort of persons within our hotel industry who are trained to international standards. Right? So I just really, the fact that the good senator raised it, and I'm sure some of this revenue from this tax will go towards the development of that training, because there are other areas where more training is needed. But that is not the focus of my presentation this afternoon, Mr. President. As the good senator identified, we have a product that offers a range of benefits, including benefits to persons in this country, certainly employ a number of individuals and a number of companies. A number of Barbadians benefit from the tourism industry, whether it be in the transport or hospitality, a number of areas. But when we think about tourism in this country, we gotta go back, because tourism has a long history in Barbados, very long. And if you can go back to the days of those in colonial period, where persons would have come from Europe to see about their plantations and visit, probably maybe enjoy some sun, not necessarily sea, but some sun, and then go back home. So you would have seen that in the early colonial periods, a number of Europeans would have come to the Caribbean, and this was mainly defined, and which European country you came from defined, which would determine which venue you visited. So if you came from Britain, for example, obviously you'll come to Barbados, you'll go Antigua in those days, maybe go to Jamaica. If you came from France, you go to Martinique, Guadeloupe. Came from Holland, you go to Curacao, Aruba, and those places. So this, the movement of persons from Europe to come here and enjoy the sea and the sun has been going on for centuries. Centuries. In 1920s, it would have picked up again. Persons in Europe had a few cents, few dollars in the pocket to spend, and they would find themselves going to places, coming to the Caribbean for the same reason. Places like Bahamas and Cuba benefited in a big way from tourists coming over from United States of America, also from Canada as well. But it was really in the 1950s or so that tourism really picked up in Barbados. And when you think about tourism at the time, and I don't want to strengthen any point that was made by the senator on the other side, but in those early days when a lot of the tourists who would have come here perhaps wanted to enjoy that period, because most of the early hotels were once plantation houses. Many of the early hotels were plantation houses. In those early days, plantation houses were converted into hotels. And there were some persons who would have wanted to just to experience life on the hotel and on the plantation setting and so on and so forth. So that would have been our early inroads into tourism before it really exploded into an industry. Would have been those persons. But that got me to thinking. That was tourism of the past. We now in 2019 Barbados going into 2020, and we're looking at tourism of the future. And where we will look to for, for our visitors, and what kind of product, tourism product we would want to present and make available for these visitors. Now, I've noticed in the last couple months, we have more or less enhanced or strengthened our links and ties to Africa, to West Africa and to East Africa. And it got me to thinking, because we're talking about opening air links to this continent. But I'm not an expert on African or African travel by any stretch of the imagination. But from my little interaction with the Africans here in Barbados, I've come to realize that they're not really as interested in the sea and the sand as perhaps those persons in Europe. So it caused me to think, how are we going to go about enticing persons from that part of the world to come here to Barbados to enjoy what we have to offer? Which brings me to the initial point of what a lot of these tourism levies are used for, is for research. And if you were to research the reasons why an African, for example, or any person, for that example, travel, there are a number of reasons. Some persons travel for leisure, and as the senator said, some persons travel for more personal, meaningful reasons. I think if we were to cater to an African, for example, African visitor, we have to look past the sea and the sand, and perhaps look for that personal relationship that West Africans especially have with the Caribbean. Bearing in mind that West Africa, if I think about Ghana, for example, was the last place that an African would have seen when leaving the African coast, and Barbados perhaps was the first piece of dry land that they would have seen. So we have to capitalize on that connection between the continent and this country. But why would an African come to Barbados, or what would entice them to come here? And I believe the one thing that would entice them more than anything else is the cultural heritage that we both share. We both share the same cultural heritage. We are a product of that continent. We are a product of those people living in Africa who so many years ago would have said goodbye to us. We came over here and we made a life. But there are still some aspects of that culture that are here evident in Barbados and throughout the entire Caribbean. And I think it's that we have to harness. We have to package it in such a way that we can then sell it back to our brothers over on the continent. And I say this because I traveled to Africa some years ago, and I was on the street. I was with some children. Children were gathering around. Probably they heard my strange accent, and they came around to hear, just to hear me speak and to hear the stories about the Caribbean. And it was 2012, and the Olympics, they were going on in England at the time, and everyone was watching, of course. And there was a race with some Cubans. The Cubans were in the race, and the Africans, they came, the young fellas, they came to me, they asked me, but how is it that there are black people running for Cuba? They didn't know that there were black people in Cuba. In fact, they did not know that there were black people in the Caribbean. In fact, they didn't know there was a Caribbean. I mean, that is not typical throughout all Africa, but there are definitely places within East Africa that do not know, persons in those places do not know of the Caribbean They don't know of the history of the Caribbean. They don't know that there are people living, black people who would have left Africa hundreds of years ago are living right here in the Caribbean, have created a civilization here in the Caribbean that in many cases is very similar to the civilization that they have right there at home. And I think that we need to use some of this revenue for these taxes to help to create that aspect of our heritage and sell it, export it to Western Africa, to Eastern Africa. We need to package it in such a way that they can see the personal link between how we live here and how they are living there. Because I believe that is probably the only reason, or one of the main reasons why they will come here. They experience what those children that left the continent came here and what they did for themselves. So I think that research needs to go into, in terms of looking for the aspects of African culture, whether it be the way we prepare our foods, the way we would use plants as to heal, as medicinal plants to heal, the way we relate to our neighbors, because even simple things like how we speak to persons, the fact that we speak to everybody and say good morning to our elders, that's not commonplace in places like Europe and America. People pass you, we go there, we say they're they're unmannerly, sorry. We say they're unmannerly because if they pass, they don't say good morning or they don't say good evening. But those are things that we brought over from Africa. They're not part of the European culture. That's who we are. And that's what we have in common with our brothers and sisters over there. So these simple little things that we take for granted, that we never realize that came from Africa, those are the things that we have to remind them of when we are selling the product, or the Barbadian product, in the western and the eastern parts of Africa. That there's so many things, even the little subtif that we do, what we call stoops. The Nigerians, they do it all the time. Yeah, they do it all the time. And it means the same thing over there as it means over here as a mark, a disgust, a mark of disrespect. It means the same thing. We have so many things in common here in Barbados and in the Caribbean, by extension, that with West Africa and in some cases East Africa. But we have to let them know about it. They don't know our story. They don't know about us. They know, some of them have known the little history of the triangular trade, but they don't know how we live and how we have retained so much of that culture, that heritage here in Barbados. And there's a deep sense of nostalgia, a deeper meaning when persons travel. I personally, when I travel to Europe, not Europe, I travel anyway, maybe North America, any place, I go to, let's say, to a zoo. I often want to see the animals from Africa. I want to see the lion, I want to see the elephant, more so than I want to see the tiger or the bear. Because I somehow have some deeper, whether you recognize it or not, whether it's unconscious or not, you recognize there's a deep connection to things from Africa. Wherever we go, we are attracted to things from Africa. Yes, often now, very often. Yes. And I think that's the same thing that exists over there. But we have to find those aspects of that African culture. We have to harness them, we have to package them, and we have to sell them to our brothers and sisters. So the research goes into that in terms of finding out what the African tourist is interested in, why the African tourists travel, what aspect of Barbadian culture they will be interested in, and we need to build out that aspect of the culture. So there's money could be spent in research and training, as I said, within our junior. But not only obviously there's the senior component of it. We would have sent a team to Russia earlier this year, which the team that did well as well. It did well, certainly did well in international cooking, international cuisine. And in fact, one of our contestants would have won the Best of Nation prize. Is now a member, a sitting member of the World Skills International, the board. So we have persons who are doing exceptionally well in their field. So there's room for research and there's training. Then we look a little bit at infrastructure. Now there's a belief and I guess there's probably some truth to it, that the infrastructure surrounding the tourist belt is perhaps the best infrastructure in Barbados. Maybe, and I don't think that's not necessarily true, but there's a perception that the infrastructure around the hotel is usually superior to other parts of the country. I've certainly been to countries in the Northern Caribbean where there's the hotel belt and then there's the ghetto. Everything outside the hotel belt is the tourist belt. Sorry, is the ghetto. You think in Northern Caribbean, you can imagine which country I'm referring to. If me even have to call it here. Tourist belt, ghetto. I don't want to see a situation where anything like that happens at all in Barbados, where infrastructure, even though it's not happening, but where the infrastructure outside of the tourist belt is lacking, because there's a perception that the tourists should have the best access to the best types of infrastructure. But my mind takes me to St. Andrew. When I speak of tourism, I cannot speak of tourism, don't speak of St. Andrew. Because I think that in terms of where tourism is trending, St. Andrew is going to be a very important component of Barbados' product going forward. Because you're looking at ecotourism, you're looking at heritage tourism. We have everything in St. Andrew in terms of something different to offer a tourist coming to this country. Of course, there are aspects of the product that could do with some upgrading. I think about signage in St. Andrew. We have the Gravity Hill. You know, when I was a child, a guy came to me and he said to me, "There's a hill that if you park your vehicle on the hill, it will reverse upwards." And it sounded silly to me. It sounded crazy to me that you could actually park on a hill and reverse up the hill, and your car will roll up the hill. Sorry, not reverse, roll up the hill. And but that made no sense. How can something roll up? You roll down. But if you go to St. Andrew, in a particular spot in St. Andrew, you can park your vehicle, you can put it in neutral, and it will roll right back up the hill. Now, if you've never experienced it, I would invite all of you to St. Andrew at some point so you can experience it yourself. But it's a real phenomenon. But there's no signage. I suspect there's no signage because, you want to spring it on the tourist or on the visitor who goes down there. But having said that, I still believe there's still a need to develop the infrastructure going into St. Andrew. I think it was the Prime Minister herself, she spoke of traveling through the Scotland district. Perhaps she was speaking about St. John. But I can tell you, she said that coming down that road was the closest thing she have had to a roller coaster experience in Barbados. And I'm saying to you, there are roads in St. Andrew that, believe me, are the closest thing that you would experience to a roller coaster. And not even a nice new modern roller coaster, that old roller coaster in Cornelia in New York, that rough ride. Places like Coggins Hill and so on and so forth that would have experienced over 10 years, just 10 years of neglect. Roads that were decent roads before, but under the previous administration were allowed to erode and be in a state of disrepair to the point now where it's definitely like a roller coaster. If you go down to certain parts of St. Andrew, go down Turnersaw Hill, Coggins Hill is the worst, and so on and so forth. But I can see that some of these funds will be going into those types of areas, because that is a tourist product. I mean, of course, there's a perception in the international world that the roads in the Caribbean, and certainly in Barbados, are bad. And I've seen advertisements on television years ago where they were creating tires or wheels or something for Caribbean roads. And the perception was that the roads were all bumpy and full of potholes and so on and so forth. But that's not the case in Barbados, and that should not be the case, and we should not settle for anything like that. I believe if you're driving on the road, you should have a decent road. The least you should have, as a person visiting someplace decent to drive on, have a comfortable ride on the road. So in terms of infrastructural development, I can almost see where a lot of these funds could be concentrated in this area. And I'm just saying that any increase in revenue from in tourism should go into the aspects of tourism to build out tourism. I mean, of course, it will go into other things, but training, infrastructure, in terms of research, so we can improve our products. These are the areas where I will want to see a lot of the funding go, because believe if we want to stay at, on top of our game, we have to be constantly reimagining and improving and tweaking going forward. The traditional sea and sand, yes, it has done well in the past, but I believe, as alluded to by the good senator here to my right, that tourists coming to the Caribbean, or tourists who are taking out their hard-earned money to spend, are now looking for more meaningful experiences. More meaningful experiences, something other than just sitting on the beach and relaxing with a rum in their hand and music in the background. They're looking for something else. And if they can come and sit in an idyllic space, a pristine area like the St. Andrew, like Scotland District, to use the whole space, and experience nature at its most pristine state. These are things that we should be pushing in our as part of our tourist product. These are not add-ons. These are not by chance things. That if you come to the beach, you may, if you feel like, go to St. Andrew. No visit to Barbados is complete without a tour of the Scotland District. No visit to Barbados really is complete without going into St. Andrew. It's true. You have to go on Turnsaw Hill and just look down and see the beauty of Barbados to really truly appreciate how beautiful this little island is. You're not going to see that from the West Coast. You're not going to see that from the South Coast. You're not going to see that from Bridgetown. You have to come into St. Andrew and see those things. But we need to put it out there that there's a part of St. Andrew, that a part of Barbados that is different, it is distinct from any other part of Barbados. In terms of the vegetation, is different. The soil type is different. The topography is different. Everything about St. Andrew is different and beautiful. I'm not going to say it's more beautiful than any other part of Barbados, but maybe it is. Some people might think so. Certainly, probably most beautiful part of Barbados to me, but that's my own personal view. St. James is nice too, but St. Andrew is pristine. St. Andrew is beautiful in a special way. So as I close, Mr. President, I know that this particular bill did not generate a lot of debate, but I just felt it important to speak to areas where I feel that some attention could be paid to going forward as we seek to build our tourism product, as we seek to expand and go into new markets. There are perhaps some things about ourselves that we've taken for granted that I think may pique the attention of persons living in parts of the world where we have not traditionally sought out visitors. I would be the happiest person to see a closer relationship or a closer bond being formed between us and our brothers and sisters over in the African continent, a greater understanding of who we are as a people in the Caribbean, our identity, our roots, the things that we hold on to without even realizing some things that we've been holding on to them for all these years. Those things from Africa, those expressions, those ways of life that have kept us all these years. I would want to see those things, some energy, some effort being placed now on the further development of these aspects of our cultural heritage. So I will close as I started by saying that I fully support this bill. I believe that it has already started the process of enhancing our product offering, our product, and will only continue to do so going forward. And with those few words, Mr. President, I'm obliged. Okay, that's that.
Boys.
Oh.
Senator Boyce, please.
Thank you for your acknowledgement and indulgence, Mr. President. This evening, I wish to join the discourse on the proposed legislation. I wish also to thank my fellow senators for allowing me the opportunity to chime in at such a late stage. I don't think I'll be too lengthy, but I actually wanted to spend some time discussing the bill. Not the effects of the bill, not the qualitative analysis of where we could derive benefit, but perhaps actually delve into the legislation and have a conversation with my fellow senators as to what is proposed and the benefits, maybe highlight some areas which may become cons, and see if we could come to what I always encourage, that civic compromise as we move forward in this chamber, sir. And with that in mind, I think we need to start by looking at the objects and regions of the legislation, which is stated quite shortly as providing for a room rate levy to be charged on the provision of tourist accommodation, a product development levy to be charged on services specified, a shared economy levy to be charged on the provision of tourist accommodation, the validation of the imposition and collection of the room rate levy, and item E, related matters. I think also it may be useful to provide a contextual background with regard to what was stated to be the reason in various reports elicited during the period 2018 to 2019. Mr. President, in April 2019, the statement by the Deputy Division Chief, Mr. Bert Van Slem, I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, was that the IMF's position was that a country should not have its main industry contributing next to nothing to tax credit. And he's quoted as saying, "The government of Barbados feels strongly that in the past, the burden sharing between residents and non-residents was not what it should be, in the sense that the tourists, the visitors to the island, did not pay their fair share in contributing to the cost of running the island, including in terms of the infrastructure." I believe, sir, subject to correction, that that points to what may be the intention which drives the purpose of the legislation. Now, Mr. Van Slem also cautioned that tourism is the main industry on the island, so it has to contribute so as to allow the government to invest in the infrastructure, which is necessary. But of course, you don't want to overtax. And I'm sure somebody would have already mentioned the goose and the golden egg and the necessary anecdotes which tend to attract that level of attention. Now, this was in April 2019, Mr. President. Now, in doing some research, I came across an IMF working paper. And of course, IMF working papers do not represent the views of the IMF. The executive board or the IMF management. They are what they are, the exercise of academics and those with the minds to delve into the nitty-gritty for the bases of hopefully others. And the statement made in relation to the EC, now this wasn't in relation to Barbados, but I believe it has some similar aspects which we could perhaps consider, was that, and if I may give the full reference for you, Mr. President, this is the IMF working paper, New Insights into ECCU's Tourism Sector Competitiveness. I can't pronounce the name, sir, but the reference is, yes, I will leave that there, sir, but the date is also WP/19/154. And the conclusion, without having to bore my fellow senators with the details, is that with tourism having become the main driver of economic growth, which I think is the same for Barbados, and employment, which I think is the same for Barbados outside of the government, and the most important source of income for the ECCU, enhancing the competitiveness of the tourism product is key for these countries. And then they break it down as to what methods should be utilized towards enhancing that competitiveness. So, sir, the starting point, which I would like to posit, is that the proposals for the levy is grounded on a basis of encouraging contribution from those who benefit from it, and as well as sharing the burden as highlighted in the various statements by the government. Also, the IMF working paper speaks to the need to enhancing the competitiveness of the tourism product, something which I'm sure our Senator Grant would have spoken on time and time and time again. What is, I believe, sir, going to be a source of some consideration is whether the proposed development levy, room rate levy, and shared economy levy strikes the right balance between the taxation to derive the revenue, which is projected at 15 million, I understand, and also to have the contribution from those who benefit and also to aid in the infrastructure. But at the same time, the balance of the need for the island to develop a competitive tourism sector. And how do these levies interact and either contribute or hinder the development of the competitiveness? And that, sir, if I can speak to a theme, is the overarching theme of my contribution this evening, sir. When we look at the legislation, well, the copies that we have been provided from the website, sir, there are three sectors in relation to which the levy is proposed, and I speak subject to correction. Firstly, the product development levy, which is set out at Section 7. And that is a levy to be imposed on the provision of direct tourism service in the manner specified in the third schedule. Then there is the room rate levy, excluding villas, which is set out at Section 5, a room rate levy to be imposed on the rental of tourist accommodation. And then you have the shared economy levy, which is set out at Section 9, Mr. President, which is the imposition on those persons who take advantage of the shared economy. Let's use the term internet bookings of the sort, I believe, will be captured under this heading. Now, what we see is that, firstly, the definitions are quite wide. If we look at Section 5, which I just discussed, and these are the persons who would be impacted by this legislation. So when we hear discourse about hotels, a tax on hotels, some may say unwarranted, defense of hotels, some may say a bit vigorous or extra vigorous, and suggestions with regard to reaching out to different aspects of the country, this legislation does that, in that the definition of what is stated to be a tourist accommodation in the version that we have been provided with, Mr. President. Tourist accommodation means an apartment, hotel, guest house, vacation rental property. That's a pretty wide swath, sir, in terms of residences, which would be impacted by this legislation. There are further requirements that they be registered with the Barbados Tourism Product Authority. That's something we'll come back to. And of course, rented to guests for reward. But the concept that this legislation only applies to hotel, it would be an incorrect one in that it applies to all these forms of accommodations. Apartments, guest houses, and vacation rental property, sir. Apartment is defined, I won't go through it, but it's a unit which provides short-term accommodation to tourists. guest houses, any premises in which sleeping accommodation is provided in 3 or more bedrooms, sir. And then finally, you have vacation rental property, which is a property value less than $3 million, and different qualifications are provided in relation to sleeping accommodations. Again, sir, I have to put the qualification with regard to the terms of the legislation, which I understand there will be some changes which we have not been provided. Noticeably, sir, is the compromise which the government was able to strike by negotiation with the stakeholders. In that, the government's intention was first set out as increasing VAT, I believe, to 15, to doubling the VAT from 7.5% to 15%, sir. And I believe that after negotiations with the relevant stakeholders in the industry and being lobbied, it was agreed that that sum would be reduced from 7.5 to 10%. And the compromise that was sought or was agreed, or maybe the compromise that's being put forward by the government, is that that slack would be picked up by the levies that we are now discussing this evening. Analysis of this discussion, sir, I believe was well set out in the Barbados budget report done by EY in 2019. And what I'm going to do is to refer to selected excerpts, all done this year, all from the Big Four accounting firms, so that we have what you call a complete picture with regard to how it's viewed. EY says, sir, when the room rate levy was first introduced, there were concerns that it would negatively affect the tourism industry. Remember what we spoke about in terms of the IMF working paper and competitiveness, Mr. President, and the balance that we're seeking to find. However, the Prime Minister has indicated that following consultation with stakeholders, always to be commended, sir, an agreement has been reached to further increase the levy by 75%. It is expected that this measure will generate $15 million over the course of 1 year. The Prime Minister mentioned that she was petitioned heavily by stakeholders in the tourism industry to reevaluate a previously announced increase in VAT applicable to accommodation. As a result, and as discussed elsewhere in this document, the Prime Minister decided to reduce the proposed increased rate of VAT from 15% to 10%. The new rate of 10% will be effective the 1st of January 2020. It is possible that, and this is why the suggestion is it was a negotiated position, it is possible that the increase in the room rate levy was a compromise to recoup some of the expected revenue which would have been lost due to the reduction in the proposed VAT increase. Nevertheless, the adjustment will result in significant increase in the levy to be charged by apartments, guest houses, hotels, villas, and vacation real properties, which will be as follows, and they set out. That's the perspective of EY, Mr. President. From the perspective of PwC, sir, their position is, while the introduction of the room rate levy, and they have actually said that it would do a proposed income of more than $15 million, but of $27 million annually, sir. They indicate that while the introduction of the room rate levy was not met with enthusiasm by the sector, the increased rates are expected to generate additional revenue, I correct myself, of $15 million annually. Both proposals would be likely to be considered as having a negative impact on the competitiveness of the sector. So we go back to the starting position, sir, which is the working paper says that for purposes of the EC, competitiveness is the area which you want to focus on with regard to increasing your tourism product and the revenue derived therefore. Actually, sir, if anyone cares to take a look at the working paper, the suggestion was that you'll be looking at a 40% net increase in terms of revenue. That, of course, has to be balanced with the position of Barbados, which may be different, but it could be something which the government could consider when it is looking at the scenarios. Sir, the position of Deloitte was that the increase in VAT on accommodation and the room rate levy would mean an increase in prices of a number of tourism sector service providers. This, however, is the preferred option to doubling the VAT rate. Again, they speak to the 15 million and they go to give forth the charts. So we have Deloitte saying that this is better than doubling the VAT rate. You have PwC saying, well, we believe that it will impact competitiveness, and you have EY indicating that the adjustment will result in a significant increase in the levy to be charged without adding any commentary in that regard. The perspective of KPMG is that government is working closely with the tourism sector on the successful enactment of the room rate levy, recognizing the impact that the new rate and the timing of implementation will have on bookings. Efforts are being made to work with the Barbados Revenue Authority to implement the tax. This is the key. Any reductions in bookings on the medium to long term may be followed by reductions in employment and in the lack of reinvestment in plant. As a flat tax, the refund system is avoided. That's the position of KPMG. So what we have, I believe, from these 4 excerpts, Mr. President, when we go back to the IMF working paper, when we consider the position stated by Mr. Van Slem, is an indication of the different types of analysis and factors which goes into what we have before us here, sir. At the end of the day, it was recognized that the government needed to find the revenue. The proposal and the methodology was the room rate levy. It was sought as a compromise, in my understanding, sir, subject to correction, with regard to the proposed doubling of the VAT. The concern expressed by the tourism sector is this potential impact on competitiveness. This concern with regard to competitiveness drills down and back to the fact that the working paper suggests that if you impact competitiveness, you have a greater impact on your revenue, which of course does not stand to your benefit. So the question is, how long for the room rate levies? How would they be monitored? Implementation and potential adjustments in the future. And I know that Senator McConney is very keen on addressing issues raised during debate, so I look forward to hear the response of the government in that regard. Now, along with the, let's call that the macro perspective, Mr. President, there are also some concerns I would like to raise on behalf of the, you would have heard this term already, sir, the rank and file Bajans, sir. The persons who would be impacted by the wide definitions that we've saw, who may find themselves now under these obligations with regard to interaction with the BRA. So my first plea would be, please government, allow significant amount of education, notification. You've done the consulting with the major tourism players, but let's talk about the minor tourism players. Let's talk about the families who do a 1-bedroom rental on Airbnb. The requirement now with regard to keeping of information, with regard of liaising with the Barbados Revenue Authority, and with regard to the potential penalties. If I take you, sir, to the first requirement, which I've taken a note of, and this is by way of an example, sir. Under Section 4, any person who provides a tourist accommodation shall register with the Barbados Tourism Product Authority. Shall. Any person. Now, I have no problem in you saying that a hotel making X amount of profit should carry this responsibility. I have no problem with a villa which is well run and managed carrying this responsibility. My concern, of course, is the wide ambit and persons who will find themselves caught, and now they may not recognize that they're caught by the definition of tourist accommodation. And then when we go back, sir, you know, Mr. President, you're accustomed with this style. You know, you have to take them back. You have to take them back to the source, sir. Tourist accommodation means apartment, hotel, guest house, and vacation rental property, sir. We have the definitions. So the first thing is if you're involved in tourist accommodation, you're now required to register with the Barbados Tourism Product Authority. So how do we inform persons about this obligation? How do we educate them? How do we facilitate the ease of that process, Mr. President? Sir, also in terms of the penalties for breach of the obligations, there's a requirement, sir, of notification of the room rate levy, which is put on the person who is providing the booking. There is also a requirement for notification of the product development levy for the person who is providing the product. There is a requirement for notification of shared economy levy for the person who is indulging in the practice, sir. And there is an attendant obligation on the person who is providing these services to do the collection. So, again, while this may be something easy for a hotel or a sophisticated operation, the impact it would have on a regular person may be somewhat detrimental with regard to the management and time required. And not only, sir, is it a requirement to collect and pay the levy, sir, but under Section 15, there is an obligation, Mr. President, to keep the accounts and records. Mr. President, I can tell you that you do not know accounting. I know I don't know accounting because of the practice that we do, sir. And if we find ourselves renting out or doing a side business in terms of apartments, we will have to pay some person to do that, sir. Or find a way or somebody to facilitate that process. That's an additional cost, Mr. President. Now, it may generate opportunity, it may generate small business, but it also has an impact on those persons in the lower economic threshold who do this type of business to generate income with regard to the obligations. So can some consideration be given with regard to phasing in the implementation? I have no problem. Start with the hotels tomorrow. Tomorrow. Start with the big villas tomorrow. But in terms of the mom and pop shops, let's call it that, the small apartments, the small Airbnbs, this restriction may be a bit heavy, Mr. President. And I go on, sir. The keeping of accounts, Section 15 says, a person who provides tourist accommodation, we spoke about what that definition is, a direct tourism service or rents a villa shall keep records, information, and accounts so as to enable the Revenue Commissioner to determine the amount of the levy. Now, when you fail to keep the records, the Commissioner may require the person to keep some records as the authority determines, and you have to keep it for 5 years. But, Mr. President, look at Section 15.4. If you fail to keep the records, information, and accounts, you're guilty of an offense with a fine of $5,000, Mr. President. I don't want to see you fined, sir. No, I should start referring to yourself. I wouldn't want to see that, sir. And this is the penalty. Yes, sir. So this is what you find yourself with regard. And not only that, sir, an officer may at any reasonable time, I go to Section 16 now, audit or examine the records of a person who provide tourism accommodation. So, Mr. President, the person who is providing the tourist accommodation, again, no issue with the hotels, no issue with the villas, but the mom and pop shop are now subject to auditing with regard to payments of the levies. And not only that, sir, the auditing powers provided under this document at Section 16.2 says, an officer may at any reasonable time enter upon the premises, inspect and examine the documents. They have the power to seize and take records, etc., etc. Mr. President, this type of legislation, we understand the purpose and we understand the potential benefits. The problem is with the wide net that is being cast, persons will be impacted, and what I am asking is that we ensure there's a program of education to facilitate how it's being rolled out, to ensure that there are not any disastrous potential results of persons who may find themselves unable to comply with the new requirements with regard to their information, their accounts, and their records. And Mr. President, there's a penalty for if you fail to pay the levies, and that makes sense, sir. If you're collecting money, you should pay it over. So there's a penalty for that. I don't think anyone can have an issue with that. But there's a penalty for failing to keep records. So if granny or if the old lady doesn't keep the records, as again, no issue to the hotels. But if the mom and pop operation doesn't keep the records, sir, they're in trouble, serious trouble under this legislation. So we need to find a way to reduce the impact on the small players, sir. Sir, there is also penalties with regard to failing I spoke to the penalty in relation to regard to failing to pay over the money, sir. I believe there's also a penalty for failing to pay over and not provide notification that you have to do the levy, sir. So if there is not the applicable education program, persons who are not charging the levy find themselves potentially liable. So the public needs to be educated, and the revenue commissioner needs to be given the resources. Now, sir, there is provision for objections to this process, and there is further provisions for appeal all the way up to the High Court, sir. Now, we understand the purpose of the legislation. The issue will be, of course, sir, the implementation and the provision of the resources to facilitate the revenue commissioner in doing this job. Because it is a job which is supposed to be done under the ambit of the Barbados Revenue Authority. And where are the resources currently for this process? Where are the resources going to come from for this process? And we have seen the difficulty, while the ideas are good, with the implementation and the communication with the public. And the public are the ones who would be saddled with the responsibility, Mr. President, if they do not comply. So let us make sure we have the communication. Let us make sure that the government is given the resources, and we find them, to ensure that persons are aware of this impact. Now, approaching the wind-up, sir. Besides the consideration on the small players, the big players, and I think that we should be all mindful that everyone will have their unique perspective because, you know, who feels it knows. But, Mr. President, and I'm glad that Senator Grant is here. We speak about initiatives. Mr. President, would you indulge me for a few more minutes, sir? We speak about initiatives, sir. And we all remember, of course, the access that was granted under the Tourism Development Act, wherein persons were being able to get concessions with regard to certain infrastructure development and importation of items. But, sir, as Senator Grant is aware, sir, as of June this year, there was significant frustration by the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association of being able to access the concessions because despite having the legislative framework, Mr. President, you have to interact with the bureaucracy to get the concessions. So, Mr. President, what is then a question which derives from this is if the hotels have a problem interacting with the bureaucracy to get the concession where they have the money to actually follow through, and that is quote-unquote licks, what happens to the person who is trying to organize themselves under the room rate levy regime? How are they going to fare? So the fear is, that's a deliberate pun, the fear is that unless resources are provided and education is given, we are going to have a significant impact on those persons who rely on this type of industry to supplement their income. No one is saying do not derive your revenue, government. No one is saying that persons should carry their fair share. However, the concern is the potential of the penalties being imposed on persons who do not have the sophistication, the wherewithal, or the means, sir, to be able to avoid that process. Now, we say this recognizing that there needs to be a facilitative framework. And the facilitative framework comes out of dialogue between the respective parties. The hotels say they have access to the concessions, but the process is archaic and difficult. There are no concessions, Mr. President, for the small individual doing his rental. So if something is being taken, perhaps something could be given. This is why I like civic compromise. I've already said my political ideology, center-left. I've said it on record a number of times, sir, and I believe the other term is, which my friends know very well. But the point is, sir, the ability to access needs to be something that is communicated, and the process and the framework needs to be something that we work on, sir. The cost is also a factor which we need to bear in mind, and at the end of the day, we need to go back to the base reason as to why it is being done. Yes, there is need for the revenue, but we need to be very careful, sir, that we do not impact our competitiveness. And also, my concern relates to the smaller players. How do we ensure that they're not caught in this wide net, which is now being cast, and they're given some avenue to get their house in order and some potential concession with regard to the new obligations? I thank you, Mr. President. That is my contribution for the evening.
Senator McConnell, I think the time has come now for you to wrap up this debate.
Mr. President, thank you very much. And, you know, I didn't expect this level of debate on this bill, but I'm very grateful that we have received this level of debate. It shows that we're still engaged even at this long hour. And I do want to thank especially all of the senators here who have made the contribution. Senator Grant brought statistics to the table that helped to, I hope, alleviate the concern and the fear and the confusion of one of our other senators who thought that simply by that we were unable to bring that balance between competitiveness and taxation about which Mr. Boyce spoke. And I think those statistics bear out that at this point in time, Barbados is managing to indeed maintain that kind of a balance. I want to thank Senator Springer for the encouragement he has given us to export culture and to look at research and training and at non-traditional markets in moving forward. Senator Boyce, I also thank you very much for your contribution with regards to ensuring that those who will need to implement are educated and enabled so to do, particularly those who might not normally have the wherewithal to do so in a significant way. One of the comments that was made is about the standards that we keep that some might not be able to maintain. I think one of the things we have to keep in mind, and I know that Senator Grant has preached this over and over again, we need to protect brand Barbados, and therefore there must be standards and there must be regulations, because it is not simply people booking a particular place in Barbados at any standard. It's the entire brand that is on the table every time they book or eat or use a service of any kind here altogether. So we have to be mindful, because that too contributes to the very competitiveness of which you speak. And so, colleagues, I believe that covers the contributions for today. There was one other, I believe we will go into committee at some point in time, but at that point in time I will address some of the other concerns that were raised by one of our other colleagues at this point in time. So, Mr. President, without further ado, and with your indulgence, I wish to beg that this bill now be read again a second time.
The question is that the bill under consideration be now read a second time. All honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that Your Honor do now leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself in committee for further consideration of this bill.
Question is that I do now leave the chair. The Senate resolves itself into a committee of the whole Senate for the further consideration of the bill in detail. All honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it, and we are now in committee.
The Senate is in committee.
Mr. Chairman, as the Honorable Acting Leader of the Senate would have indicated, there are some amendments, and those amendments start as early as the objects and reasons to the bill. So, objects and reasons.
All right, Mr.
Objects and reasons.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, as I move into objects and reasons and some of the other amendments that will follow that will be very similar, I just want to assure this honorable House that the amendments that we're proposing are not substantive in terms of having any consequential impact on the substance of the bill. These are mainly definitions, clarifications, phrases that are included, and new definitions that are introduced given what we are considering here in this bill, sir. And I would wish to start, sir, with objects and reasons, and if my colleagues can follow along with me on the bill. There is in objects and reasons A, one of the recommendations that was made subject to conversations with the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association and the Barbados Revenue Agency and Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Tourism. The decision was that we will seek to eliminate villa from all parts of this legislation and replace it with a different title which is the vacation rental property, which will incorporate the old definition of rental property as well as villa. And so when you see us making that change, Mr. Chairman, you will see that villa is going to be replaced in some cases by nothing, and in some cases by the new definition where it so pertains. And it is with that, sir, that we start with objects and reasons. In A, we propose that you remove "or a villa" from the end, given that the term villa no longer will exist. That is in objects and reasons A. Objects and reasons C, "or a villa," again, removed from the second line of that, of number C. Mr. Chairman?
The question is that under objects and reasons, "or a villa" be removed from A, and from C, "or a villa" again be removed. All honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, at the long title, which starts with a bill entitled "An Act to Provide for."
Mr. Chairman, I propose that we amend at the end of A, under the long title, that we remove "or a villa" at the end of A.
Let's see.
And that at C, we remove "or a villa" from the second line of C.
The question is that on the long title, at the end of at A, removed or a villa, and at C, we again remove or a villa. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 1.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clause 1 stand part.
The question is that clause 1 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move the following amendments to clause 2, that we delete the definition of apartment and substitute with the following new definition. So, under 2. And the new definition, sir, once you're ready. Apartment means a complete unit which provides short-term accommodation to guests for reward, comma, having either one or more studio bedrooms or separate bedrooms, comma, a living room, comma, a kitchen or kitchenette, comma, a dining area where A, at least one bedroom in the unit is for the exclusive use of the occupant of the unit. Bathroom, sorry. So let me repeat that, sir. A, at least one bathroom in the unit is for the exclusive use of the occupant of the unit. B, the occupants of the unit share the grounds, comma, other recreational facilities, and other common buildings with the occupants of other units, semicolon. And C, the unit is within a building or group of buildings owned by a single owner without a separate legal title per unit. At the end, where we have accommodation period means, I would propose that we take or villa off the end. That's the same too, very same. Oh, I'm sorry. That's an accommodation period, sir. So I will simply suggest, I will pass you, excuse me, please. Apartments.
The question is that the definition of apartment reads as follows.
You don't have to.
Which one?
As this is going to be one clause. You will take the entire clause, which consists of different definitions.
Mr. Chairman, there has This is all part of the interpretation or the list of definitions. There's also a further proposed amendment to the definition for accommodation period, where we are simply removing or villa from the end of that sentence.
Yeah.
Also, sir, with your permission, still in that said clause 2, the definition for direct tourism service, we wish to delete the definition that is there and replace the definition for direct tourism service to say, direct tourism service means the provision of goods and services by a person who, A, has a license from the Barbados Tourism Product Authority, and B, is also registered or licensed by any of the following. 1, Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association, Inc. 2, Small Hotels of Barbados, Inc. 3, Cultural Industries Development Authority. 4, Ministry of Creative Economy, Culture and Sports. 5, Ministry of Health and Wellness. 6, Town and Country Planning Office. 7, Ministry of Maritime Affairs and the Blue Economy. 8, Ministry of Tourism and International Transport. Or 9, another entity or organization which is approved by the Barbados Tourism Product Authority.
Any more on the 2?
On the clause 2 as well, sir, the final, well, it's not quite the final, it's the penultimate, proposal is for the definition of goods and services to be included. And that will be included in alphabetical order, sir. So it comes before guest and after direct tourism service. And that proposed definition, sir, reads as follows. Goods and services means any of the following goods or services. A, entertainment, comma, other than entertainment supplied by a promoter of public entertainment, comma, including theatrical performances, comma, film, comma, exhibitions, comma, dinner shows, and other performances. B, cruises other than international cruises. C, goods and services related to sport and recreation. D, goods and services provided at marinas. E, goods and services provided at spas and retreats. F, goods and services provided in conference facilities. Or G, meals, drinks, and dining services. Further proposed amendment, Mr. Chairman, is to the definition of vacation rental property. As I would have mentioned earlier, sir, we have now encompassed villas in vacation rental property. The proposed amendment, Mr. Chairman, reads as follows. Vacation rental property means any property including a dwelling house or house, including a dwelling house or house, but not a guest house, hotel, or apartment, which is registered with the Barbados Tourism Product Authority, that is systematically or periodically rented by guests during the calendar year, and in which A, a charge is made for the accommodation provided. B, sleeping accommodation is provided in one or more bedrooms. C, the grounds and any common areas or recreational facilities are for the use of the occupants of a single booking. And I propose, sir, that we delete D, which starts housekeeping services, and that the E that's there becomes D. At the end of agent of D, the E that became D, there is a full stop instead of a semicolon. Further, sir, villa means a house that, sir, that entire definition of villa, we propose it be removed because that definition no longer exists because it has now been encompassed in vacation rental property. That concludes the proposed amendments for Clause 2.
The question is that the amendments relating to Clause 2 be made to the bill. That would be the amendments relating to the definition of apartment, the definition of accommodation period, direct tourism services, the addition of goods and services, and the definition relating to rental, vacation rental property. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Senator Moore.
Yes, Deputy President, we just have a concern. It was flagged by the opposition senator, and I hear it coming back, and it's a source of concern for me, where we have mention of the Barbados Tourism Product Authority. To the best of my knowledge, there is no Barbados Tourism Product Authority. There is a department that was part of the Barbados Tourism Product Authority, which is responsible for regulations. And that department, as at the 1st of April this year, was supposed to be a part of the Ministry of Tourism. The department physically, in the way it is explained in another place, and where it is explained in that place can be at conflict here, is that that department still physically sits in warrants with the BTMI and where the BTPA physically sat, but that it should be a part of the Ministry of Tourism. So if we are making amendments, the suggestion came earlier that it may have been proper to include it under the Ministry of Tourism. Now, if there's a reluctance of including it under the Ministry of Tourism, because we have not yet done everything with the regulations to have that department sitting properly in the Ministry of Tourism, we still have a problem, because we still find ourselves in a situation where we have that department functioning where it may be neither fish, fowl, or good red herring. We need to be able to have it right. If for the purposes of this bill, the contemplation is that we make the amendment, let it go through, and when it is properly done, then we adjust it. It is still botchy, because when we had a situation that the Barbados Tourism Product Authority and the Barbados Tourism Marketing Inc. were being merged into one entity earlier this year, I know very well that the representative of the workers during those discussions, highlighted the challenge that we were to have, and this would mean why I would find the situation, even to put it in and then address it later, unacceptable, is that it would mean since March, when those discussions were held and a number of people were sent home because there was no longer to be a Barbados Tourism Product Authority. It would mean that we've had April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December, 9 months to fix a simple problem. We haven't fixed that. So then we will have this as an attendant problem. I'm just saying that the passage of this bill should not be held up for that, but the passage of this bill represents another botched job in changes to legislation where we are not doing things comprehensively.
Grant, can you explain to us what is the status or health of the Barbados Tourism Product Authority?
Mr. President, Mr. Deputy President, Chairman, my understanding is that in law today, the Barbados Tourism Product Authority still exists. Senator Moore is correct in that that entity is to go to the Ministry of Tourism, but that has not, the process has not been completed, and the Barbados Tourism Product Authority in law still exists. That is one area. The other thing is that even though the legislation speaks to the Barbados Tourism Product Authority, I'm told by my interaction with the CPC's office that even when the change is made and it goes to the Ministry of Tourism, it doesn't matter that the legislation says Barbados Tourism Product Authority, because it carries on to the entity that would be responsible for executing the work that is required with respect to the Barbados Tourism Product Authority. So while there was the suggestion for the Barbados Product Authority to come to an end and to go into the Ministry of Tourism, that process, my understanding is, has not been completed. But that does not stop the reference in the bill to Barbados Tourism Product Authority, and even when that is done, there's no further need for a change because it carries into the ministry as the competent entity that will execute the functions of the Barbados Tourism Product Authority.
Senator Moore?
Deputy President, I'm no drafter, but when we speak of botchiness, I know when something looks bad, and perception is reality. And if it is that we understand that there is not today supposed to be a Barbados Tourism Product Authority, I think the simplest thing would have been to, in the legislation, make a definition, do something to say, make a reference to the agency that will be responsible for regulation without calling it Apple, BTPA, or anything at all. So that whether it goes into the Ministry of Tourism tomorrow and into the Ministry of Finance next year, that it would be understood that the agency responsible for doing this, but to call it a BTPA where there is no longer a BTPA, and I would be interested if there's still a BTPA and that is what is being said, because I have some cases pending that may help me,
That there is one.
that there is one.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, the question of making a change to the reference to the Barbados Tourism Product Authority, in our discussions with respect to the draft bill, that is a question that I asked of the attorney from the Chief Parliamentary Counsel's office. I too, sir, I am not a drafter, and I would have referenced that question with the attorney who is involved with the drafting, and the response from the attorney was that even though the references to the Barbados Tourism Product Authority, which in law exists and which in future will go to the Ministry of Tourism, that when that happens, there's no need for a further amendment because it carries in the law to whatever entity it is so designated to carry out the functions.
It's just that perfect legislation is hard to find. And very often what? Yeah, imperfect legislation is easy to execute. but perfect legislation is very, very hard. It's very difficult. And we may very well at some time later have to come back to make some small amendment to it. But as it stands now, I think Senator Grant's explanation, it can hold us for the time being, maybe. Yeah. So the amendments then relating to clause 2. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 3.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clause 3 stand part.
The question is that clause 3 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 4.
Mr. Chairman, I propose the following amendments to clause 4. 4B, that we delete 4B, and that 4C then becomes 4B. 4B starts a villa for the reward, that entire B be removed, deleted, and the C would then become B. With regards to 2, under clause 4, that we remove about 3 lines down, or a villa. That concludes the proposed amendments for clause 4.
Question is that the amendments be made to clause 4, that is clause 4.1 and clause 4.2. Honorable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 5.
Mr. Chairman, I propose the following amendments to clause 5. 5.1, that we remove or a villa, that be deleted. 5.1. In 5.2, that we delete or rents a villa from the first line of 5.2. And from the second line of 5.2, we remove or villa. 5.3, that in the very first line, we delete or a villa. In the third line, the second going into the third line of clause of 5.3, we remove or villa. In that same third line, we remove or villa, which is at the end of that sentence, well, of that line. And further, that on the final line of clause 5.3, we remove or villa. Then, in clause 5.4, that at the end of that sentence, we remove villa and replace villa with the new definition, which is vacation rental property. Mr. Chairman, that concludes the
would be
proposed.
With the words a rental property.
With the words, I'm sorry, with the words vacation rental property instead of villa. That concludes the proposed amendments to clause 5.
The question is that those amendments, which all seem to relate to the removal of villa, be made to clause 5. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 6.
Mr. Chairman, again, the proposed amendments to clause 6 all relate to removing villa. In 6.1, the very first line, delete or rents a villa. Same 6.1, third line, delete or villa. In 6.2, second line, remove or a villa. In 6.2, the penultimate line before you get to the bullets A, at the right side, or villa. Mr. Chairman, that concludes the proposed amendments to Clause 6.
The question is that the amendments, which again all relate to the removal of or a villa, in relation to Clause 6, yes, that those amendments be made. Honorable Senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 7.
Mr. Chairman, I propose the following amendments to Clause 7. 7.2, that we delete A and substitute for A is registered or not registered under the Value Added Tax Act, Cap 87, semicolon, and. I then propose, sir, that what is now 7.2B be deleted, and that what is 7.2C would now become 7.2B. That concludes the proposed amendments for Clause 7.
The question is that the amendments outlined to Clause 7, Clause A, and then the removal of Clause B, and then C becomes B, that those amendments be made. Honorable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 8.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Clause 8 stand part.
The question is that Clause 8 stand part. Honorable Senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 9.
Mr. Chairman, I wish to propose the following amendments to Clause 9. In Clause 9(1)(b), delete the words "or rents a villa." In the sentence that follows C, remove "or villa" from the end. Clause 9(2), the second line, remove "or villa." Clause 9(3), the first line, remove "or villa." Still, Clause 9(3), the third line going into the fourth line, remove "or villa." After 3, 9(3), insert as a new 9(4), from the first day of April 2019, the shared economy levy shall be applied to a vacation rental property. What is currently 9(4) would then become 9(5). That concludes the proposed amendments to Clause 9.
The question is that Clause 9 be amended to remove rents a villa or a villa or a villa. That is in Clause 1, 2, and 3. And then there is an insertion of Clause 4, and then a new Clause 4, and then what was initially Clause 4 now becomes Clause 5. All those in favor, please All honorable members, please say aye. All those in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 10.
Mr. Chairman, I propose the following amendments to Clause 10. In 10.1, the very first line, or rents a villa, to remove. In Clause 10.2, removing the second line, or villa, as well as in the third line, or villa. In 10.2b, in the second line, remove or villa. Mr. Chairman, that concludes the proposed amendments to Clause 10.
The question is that those amendments be made to Clause 10, which once again refer to the removal of the villa. Honorable members, honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 11.
Mr. Chairman, I propose the following amendments to Clause 11 to remove from 11.1 or rents a villa, along with the comma that follows service. Or rents a villa and the comma that precedes it. You're removing that comma, sir. That concludes proposed amendments to Clause 11.
11.1, it took the whole of 11.
Yes, sir.
The question is that the amendment made to Clause 11, which relates to the removal of or rents a villa and the comma, that amendment be made. Honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 12.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Clause 12 stand part.
The question is that Clause 12 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 13.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Clause 13 stand part.
The question is that Clause 13 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 14.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Clause 14 stand part.
The question is that Clause 14 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 15.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to propose the following amendments. In the 15.1, the very first line, remove the comma after accommodation and insert or, so that it reads a person who provides tourism accommodation or a direct tourism service. After service, still 15.1, second line, remove or rents a villa. This concludes the proposed amendments to Clause 15.
The question is that those amendments be made to Clause 15. Honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 16.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to propose the following amendments to Clause 16. Remove the comma, 16.1, remove the comma after accommodation, insert or. And after a direct tourism service, remove or rents a villa. Also in 16.1c, remove in the second line or rents a villa. In the first line of 16.1c, remove the comma after accommodation and insert or. 16.2, 16.2a, Mr. Chairman. In the second line of 16.2a, remove the comma, insert or after accommodation and before a. In the third line of 16.2a, remove or rents a villa in the third line. In 16.2b, first line, remove the comma after accommodation and insert or. That was still 2b. 2b, sir. In the first line, after accommodation, remove the comma, insert or. and after tourism service,
Or rents a villa.
remove or rents a villa.
The question is that those amendments be made to clause 16. Honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 17.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clause 17 stand part.
The question is that clause 17 stand part. Honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 18.
Beg to move that, Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clause 18 stand part.
The question is that clause 18 stand part. Honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 19.
Beg to move, Mr. Chairman, that clause 19 stand
The
part.
question is that clause 19 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 20.
Beg to move, Mr. Chairman, that clause 20 stand part.
The question is that clause 20 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 21.
Beg to move, Mr. Chairman, that clause 21 stand part.
The question is that clause 21 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 22.
Beg to move, Mr. Chairman, that clause 22 stand part.
The question is that clause 22 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 23.
I beg to move, Mr. Chairman, that clause 23 stand part.
The question is that clause 23 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 24.
Beg to move that clause 24 stand part.
The question is that clause 24 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 25.
Beg to move that clause 25 stand part.
The question is that clause 25 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 26.
Beg to move that clause 26 stand part.
The question is that clause 26 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 27.
I beg to make the following proposed amendments to clause 27. Clause 27, I propose that we delete 3 and 4 of clause 27 and replace them with the following. 3 would now be the amendments in part 1 of the 5th schedule shall be deemed to come into effect on the first day of July 2018, and the amendment, 2018, and the amendment in part 2 shall be deemed to come into effect on the first day of April 2019. That would be the new 3. 4 would then read, the 3rd column of the 2nd schedule shall be deemed to come into effect on the first day of April 2019. And 5, there will now be a 5, and that would read, the amendment specified in the 6th schedule shall take effect first day of January 2020. That concludes the proposed amendments to clause 27, sir.
The question is that those amendments be made to clause 27, and in particular that the dates have now been amended as to when certain sections of the act will come into being. All honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks ayes have it.
The first schedule.
First schedule is the schedule to the bill.
Mr. Chairman, I make to move that the first schedule be the schedule to the bill.
Question is that the first schedule be the schedule to the bill, be the first schedule to the bill. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Second schedule.
Mr. Chairman, I wish to propose the following amendments to the second schedule. The second schedule has 3 columns, sir. And if you don't mind, I will go column by column. In the first column on your left, vacation rental properties would become vacation rental property. Yes. Below vacation rental property, villa no longer exists.
Take it.
So all that relates to that, that goes across the 3 columns, would be deleted. In the far right column, next to vacation rental property, all of that text is deleted from 3.75% all the way to night. That entire text is deleted. And it is replaced with the room rate levy, with room rate levy capitalized, shall no longer be applied to a vacation rental property from this date. The shared economy levy shall be applied. That concludes the proposed amendments to Schedule 2, sir.
The amendments mentioned, which would be vacation rental properties become vacation rental property. Villa is removed from the second schedule and everything pertaining to villa in columns 2 and 3. And where vacation rental property is concerned, it is now the room rate shall no longer be applied from this date, and it is to be replaced by the what it called the the shared economy levy shall be applied. Yes. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. Third schedule.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to be clear that in the second column, the 2.5% also relates to the vacation rental.
In the second column,
Where it says amount of room rate levy effective 1st July 2018
so
to,
that has been removed.
only the one relating to vacational rentals, but the one at the bottom would apply to vacation rental property.
No, just the one which applies to villa.
The one that applies to villa will now apply to vacation rental property.
It will now apply to vacation rental
Which
property.
is the same.
Yeah.
But they're the same thing?
It's the
Yeah.
same thing.
I just want to be clear that there
Yes,
is
yes,
a rate,
yes.
yeah.
So all honorable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. Third schedule.
Third schedule.
Mr. Chairman, the proposed amendments is that under the word product development levy, we delete that table, the 2-column table, and replace that with 1 column but 2 rows on that table. The first row would be amount of product development levy with effect from 1st July 2018. And the second row would read 2.5% of the cost of the direct tourism service. So that we now see that for the product development levy, there's a 2.5% of the cost. So you understand, sir? We simply delete the table, and instead of making it,
Delete the,
delete this table, sir, and it now becomes that.
So you just have in one column better than-
The question is that the amendment suggested under the third schedule be made, which is that you are removing the 2.5 of the cost of the direct tourism service. You're replacing that with the amount of product development levy with effect from 1st July 2018.
1st August.
And then 2.5% of the cost of the direct tourism service. All honorable members in favor,
Sir?
please say.
So I just have to just to speak to this one last thing. You know, we are making amendments that have not been circulated. You know, if it is one minor amendment or two minor amendments, I can understand, but they are what people like to call a riffle, and I certainly don't have the mental capacity to keep all of them in my head. This is too wrong. You know, it is. No, yeah, you know what you're doing, but nobody else does.
But the only thing, Senator Franklin, is that you are making, invariably what you are doing, is making the same amendment with Villa and so on. It is the same amendment. It is, yes, it is a lot of sections. But really and truly, it is just one theme that runs through that. You're trying to remove that theme with the Villa, and then there are a few percentages, but it's nothing really to affect the tourism thing. But it's one thing, one little thing that runs through it. Fourth schedule. Fourth schedule.
Fourth schedule.
We did on this one? You didn't say aye? We didn't agree on it. We didn't agree on it.
Oh,
Your question?
the question is that the amendments made to the third that those amendments be made to the third schedule. Honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Fourth schedule.
Mr. Chairman, I propose the following amendments to Schedule 4. Again, to simplify, this is simply a simplification. Remove the table that has 2 columns and make it just 1 column and 2 rows. And the top row would say, amount of shared economy levy with effect from August 2018. 2018. It's the same, similar to what is written there already. And then the second row will say 10% of the cost of the rental or lease of the tourist accommodation, whether that charge is a rate which is charged per night or per bed, or a rate for the period of use. May I repeat that, sir? 10% of the cost of the rental or lease of the tourist accommodation, whether that charge is a rate which is charged per night or per bedroom, or a rate for this period of use. It is exactly what is there in the left-hand
same
column
column.
already. All that happened is we're collapsing it and
You're collapsing
simplifying it.
Yeah. The question is that those amendments be made to the fourth schedule. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
fifth schedule.
Mr. Chairman, the fifth schedule refers to consequential amendments that will have to be made to other bills because of what is done in this one. And those bills being the Barbados Revenue Authority Act 2014, the Land Tax Act Cap 78A, the Tourism Development Act Cap 341, and the Value Added Tax Act Cap 87. Now, sir, there are entire sections that will have to be replaced, so I will simply say what will be pulled out. And again, this is just consequential because of what would have happened, so there's nothing new in a significant way here. And so the first one, under Barbados Revenue Authority Act 2014, in the very first line under amendment, you'll notice there are two columns. Under amendment, you remove the second word, which is section. You start the sentence so it reads, insert in section 15. So you are putting the word insert in section 15. You are removing the words by inserting. The following subsections, and the rest remains in that very first block of text. Okay. You're right, correct. In the second group of text in the right-hand column on the Barbados Revenue Authority Act 2014, that sentence would now read, in the first schedule, remove by. Inserting now becomes the word insert. The following paragraph after paragraph 10. So that now reads, in the first schedule, insert the following new paragraph after paragraph 10. Mm-hmm. 11, Tourism Levy Act 2019. That's what is to be inserted. Are you still with me, sir?
Yes.
Under Land Tax Act, Cap 78A, delete all words and replace them with the following.
Delete all words. Delete in section 60. Delete section.
Delete. Let me just read and just be very careful, sir. This is what it would now read, sir. So yes, delete that entire section, sir. It will now read, sir, delete section 6D, as in donkey, 6D, and substitute the following. Tax payable in respect of vacation rentals. 6D1. The proprietor of a vacation rental property shall pay tax at the rate specified under section 6(1), with effect from the first day of April 2011, where the tax is paid at the time prescribed in section 28, comma, the actual amount payable shall be calculated on 75% of the tax demanded. That is 6D1. 6D2, for the purpose of this section, now it is 6D2A, you say A, proprietor includes the owner of a vacation property rental and any person not being the owner, comma, who for the time being has immediate control over the management of the vacation rental property. Continues B. Vacation rental property, in parentheses, means, there are two A's there, so you take out one of the A's, means a dwelling house or house which is registered with the Barbados Tourism Product Authority and which, 1, is valued at not less than $525,000. 2, makes a charge for the accommodation provided. 3, is systematically or periodically rented by guests during the calendar year for at least 3 months during the year. 4, provides sleeping accommodation in one or more rooms. 5, is managed by an individual, company, or real estate agent and employs no less than 3 persons. And 6, the grounds and any common areas or recreational facilities are for the use of the occupants of a single booking. With regards to the Tourism Development Act, Cap 341, the amendments proposed are that it will now read Section 2. This is Section 2 of the Tourism Development Act, Cap 341. Delete the definition of the word villa and insert the following definition in alphabetical order. Vacation rental property means A, again you remove the extra A that's there, means A, dwelling house or house which is registered with the Barbados Tourism Product Authority and which A, is valued not less than $525,000, makes a charge for the accommodation provided, is systematically or periodically rented by guests during the calendar year, comma, for at least 3 months during that year. D, provides sleeping accommodation in one or more rooms. E, is managed by an individual, company, or real estate agent and employs no less than 3 persons. And F, the grounds and any common areas or recreational facilities are for the use of the occupants of a single booking. Delete the word villa wherever it appears and substitute the words vacation rental property, therefore. With regards to the Value Added Tax Act, Cap 87, the consequential amendment would say, Section 2, insert the following definition in alphabetical order. Remove one of the parentheses. There are 2 sets of parentheses at the beginning. You remove one. It says direct tourism service has the meaning assigned to by Section 2 of the Tourism Levy Act 2019, in brackets Act 2019 dash, I guess that will be filled in. Section 7, repeal subsection 3B. Delete Section 711 and substitute the following. 11 in brackets, with respect from the first day of October 2013, with effect from the first day of October 2013, the tax imposed by subsection 1 of the supply of accommodation on the supply of accommodation in a guest house, comma, hotel, comma, inn, comma, apartment, or any other similar place, semicolon, or for a direct tourism service shall be 7.5% of the value of the supply and is payable by the registrant at the time the supply is made. Delete section 712 and delete the fourth schedule from the Value Added Tax Act, Cap 87. In part 2 of that said act, I know. Insert in the second schedule the following new paragraph after paragraph 15. Should say 16. From the first day of April 2019, a supply of a vacation rental property, comma, being a house or a dwelling house, which is registered with the Barbados Tourism Product Authority and is systematically or periodically rented for a charge or sum during a calendar year by guests as tourist accommodation. Mr. Chairman, that concludes the proposed amendments for
To
schedule,
five.
for the fifth schedule.
Because of the effect and the repercussions which the act would have on other enactments, such as the Barbados Revenue Authority Act, the Land Tax Act, the Tourism Development Act, and the Value Added Tax Act. The amendments referred to have been made, and that would be to the fifth schedule. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The sixth schedule.
Mr. Chairman, this is, I propose the following amendments to this final schedule to this bill. Delete sections of the Value Added Tax Act, Cap 87. Delete section 711 and substitute the following. 11 then would be, with effect from the first day of January 2020, the tax imposed by subsection 1 on the supply of accommodation in a guest house, comma, hotel, comma, inn, comma, apartment, or any other similar place, semicolon, or for a direct tourism service shall be 10% of the value of the supply and is payable by the registrant at the time the supply is made. Mr. Chairman, that concludes proposed amendments to Schedule 6 of this bill.
The question is that the...
Mr. Chairman, before the vote is taken, I think we need to have a moment where we commend Senator McConney as leader of government business for taking us through this very arduous process. However, sir, recognizing the effort that was taken, I believe, sir, that Standing Order 50 could provide guidance in the future. Recognizing things need to be done in a certain way at certain times, but we can do better, sir. But I want to thank Senator McConney for her steadfastness and the ability of guiding us through this process. And we urge in future that we avoid the scenario that we just had to endure. But I want to thank Senator McConney for what she has been able to do, sir.
So the question is that the amendments relating to the sixth schedule be made. So honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. Report.
Mr. President, Mr.
Thank you.
Sir, Mr. President, I beg to move that Your Honor, I beg to move that you now report to His Honor the passing of one bill.
The question is that I do now report His Honor the President
With amendments.
the passing of one bill in committee with amendments. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman has reported to me the passes of the bill under consideration in committee with multiple amendments.
Third time.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill be now read a third time.
Question is that the bill under consideration be now read a third time. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill do now pass with amendment and as amended and be cited as the Tourism Levy Act 2019.
Question is that the bill under consideration do now pass and be cited as the Tourism Levy Act 2019. All honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no.
No. G5.
A division has been called for. Should be circulated earlier. Roll call, look your names.
Senator Moore,
Aye.
Senator McConney,
Aye.
Senator Dr. Springer,
Aye.
Senator Grant,
Aye.
Senator Dr. Holder,
Aye.
Senator Cummins,
Aye.
Senator Haynes,
Aye.
Senator Sands,
Aye.
Senator Franklin,
No.
Senator Boyce,
Abstention, sir.
Senator Maynard,
Abstention.
His Honor Senator Greenwich,
Aye.
Mr. President, the results of the division. 9 honorable senators voted in favor. There was 1 voted against and 2 abstentions.
The results of the division, as I understand it, is as follows: 9 in favor, 1 against, and 2 abstentions. The bill has therefore been passed and will be cited as the Tourism Levy Act 2019. Tourism Levy Act 2019.
Mr. President, that concludes the government's business for today. I beg to move that we now adjourn, sign a day, but do wish to share with honorable members that there is a likelihood that we may be asked to sit next Wednesday. That said, sir, move for adjournment, sign a day.
The question is that the Senate be now adjourned without a day appointed. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We now stand adjourned until we've been given notice of our next sitting. We might be premature in that regard.